Yes. Hello. Are we ready to go? Good. Remember, we are on live stream, so your attention, please. A very good afternoon to all of you who are joining us, and thank you for being here for this event happening here at the Food Systems Pavilion. Are the slides on? Okay, so as you can see on your screens, this event is entitled Land, Livestock and Livelihoods. And what we want to do here is to look at early actions for adaptation and resilience building for Africa's rangelands and drylands. This event is organized by a number of partners, and as you'll see on the screen, we have the International Land Coalition, ILRI, the Jamil Observatory, Mercy Corps, and SNV. So my name is Vivian Atakos. I work for the CGIAR, Gender Impact Platform. I'm based at ILRI. I will be your moderator for this event. To take you through how the session for today goes, remember we only have 60 minutes and we want to maximize the 60 minutes. So we are going to have a framing presentation, as you can see on your screens, and then we'll move on to a short video. As you can see, the room setup is sort of 4 groups, and we'll move into the 4 groups at some point. After the 4 groups, we will get some interaction where we'll have your feedback, and then we'll reconvene into plenary, get reflections, and then adjourn. At this point, allow me to introduce Guyo Malita Roba, who is the head of Jamil Observatory for Food Security. Early action. He's going to give us the framing presentation. Guyo, a round of applause for him.
Presentation? Okay, thank you very much. I will speak to my slides because they are mine as we wait for them to fix the presentation. Basically, in the framing presentation, I'll take you through a few things. One, I think, for those who are not very familiar with dryland, a little bit, a picture of the global part of dry. Okay, you're good. Thank you. So, dryland is a unique landscape ecologically with a spatial and temporal variability in resources, which means basically within the dryland areas, we don't have homogeneity. And that is simply why we use different framing when we are doing investment choices within dryland. And as you can see globally, the importance of dryland in the world is really very evident in the picture, which means a quarter of the land population, land mass is actually dryland. And then interestingly, it covers 2/3 of African landscape, which makes it even more important in our midst. But then when you come to number of population that exists on dryland, depending on livestock, predominantly livestock keeping, is between 200 to 250 million, depending on the statistics you read. And that really is not just a number. It's people whose livelihood strategy is really embedded within the dryland, making livestock a very important thing for our discussion. Why does pastoralism matter in this era? They matter for a number of reasons. I can't go to full list, but I think 2 things are very important. One is the food security. Research has already shown that pastoralism delivers better food security than crop. So technically speaking, there's no alternative to livestock keeping within the dryland areas. And secondly, the protein, edible protein, more efficiently realized from pastoral livestock systems than intensive livestock systems within the dryland areas. And of course, its contribution, depending on how you measure in different countries, this is still contested. We always talk about the direct values. There's a lot of indirect values that actually support this data. But then it's important to notice that the contribution to GDP is enormous, especially within the Horn of Africa, where we exist. But then, despite all this importance, there are a few things that basically undermines this contribution. One is the strong misconception that shapes policies and decision and priorities within dryland areas. But that now, in our conversation, which brings anticipatory action into the center, is the increasing stress from environmental and other shocks that really brings another layer of uncertainty, variability, and compounding the risk that is already within the dryland landscapes. Then, quickly on the exposure, we've seen globally, I think the increase in annual temperature is well documented. Dryland areas, the heat stress is really higher. So animals, which means that certain animal species cannot withstand certain threshold of temperatures, and that lead to livestock loss, death, and mortality. Of course, I come from pastoral community, so our coping capacity is overstretched. People use between seasons, in drought seasons, to bounce back. Now, with back-to-back drought, there is no space for bouncing back, literally. You don't reconstitute your herd. It takes you like 2 years to reconstitute a herd to come back and help people. And of course, we have seen incidences where resource-based conflict has also been very, on the rise because of the mobility issue across countries, across regions and communities. And then there's the new thing called the carbon rush. Within the dryland area is traditionally seen as an empty space. And when you see that, carbon sequestration, the carbon money, which is couched or placed on a shaky land tenure and land rights, make it very dangerous for people who live there. And actually, it compounds the resource-based conflict, especially from the state to the community and to a third party, which is usually international investors. Okay? So that doesn't mean that there's no investment within the dryland area. There are multiple investments, some coordinated, some not very coordinated. Production, the investment around production and productivity. Basically, we have, I think, for many years within research and action, basically invested in livestock breed improvement, animal disease control, rangeland improvement, fodder piloting, fodder production, and many other things, which I think has contributed in big way to shaping the decisions of government and planning and investments. The second investment line is also commercialization. We've done quite well in different countries for the last 50, 60 years with all its own challenges. Commercialization between the investment in the downstream and the upstream has been really value addition, processing, infrastructure, including physical market and etc., have been invested in pastoral areas, and it has paid off to a different level. But then this brings me to my point. There are investments that actually contributed positively to resilience of pastoralists. But then when these are not well conceived and designed, then there's a huge risk of maladaptation, which means it has more injurious effect on the pastoral livelihood. Instead of supporting them in the adaptation, it actually affects or lessens the capacity of pastoralists to be resilient. And that is through different social and environmental costs that this kind of maladaptation brings to. And these are examples of maladaptation within dryland area. Basically, dryland farming, irrigation, and all these things are the center thing. Rangeland is receding, especially if you use species which are not well tested, not indigenous, endemic species. You have a risk of actually bringing in, species with less grazing potential and actually has spreading potential, which is more risky. And of course, this all creates lock-in for vulnerability and exposure to risk. And that takes me to my last slide, which basically is a call for action. In this space where we have worked either in research, in investment, and livestock investment, I think there are different things we could do. The first one, I think the research and the visualization of financial and social cultural costs at benefit of future transition. Transition is not a linear process from pastoral to other aspects. Usually, it's not founded on research or clearly visualized, pathway. So this is very important to realize. If you're introducing something within an area, then it has to have a very clear roadmap and it has to align to the investment or livestock master plan of a given country. The second, I think, the asset and knowledge of pastoralists is very important, but largely discounted in many cases because the science does not either approve the science of the community, or it's not easily to mobilize this knowledge within the community. But we have seen actually within rangeland projects, within all the projects, there's very strong ecological knowledge around indicators of land health, indicators of useful species, and many other things, animal management and etc., which actually forms a very important basis. So, and that takes me to the need to invest early to counter the risk of land, livestock, and livelihood. Largely, within the dryland areas, we have this reactionary approach to responding to shock. And we're really pushing for this early, early dictation and using early warning to counter the risk. And that actually require use of predictive evidence and data. Data is weakest in the country, but then data is also weaker in dryland areas. And that will going to affect how we design both long-term resilience project as well as short-term response and recovery. So, and this now takes me to my last point, which is building transformative anticipatory and management capacity of pastoralists. As I said at my first slide, the capacity of the community have been really tested and overstretched, and our intervention has to build in this transformation so that pastoralism evolve and our support evolve within that space as they move to the next level. Thank you very much. I think that's my time.
Let's appreciate him better. He spent a lot of time working on his presentation. So thank you, Guyo, for framing this session. And now we want to go to West Africa, where we are going to listen to a pastoralist who's going to tell us how climate change exacerbates fragility and conflict, and where and how we need to act or invest. He's on video. Thank you.
Pour ça, je dois rappeler un peu ce que notre espace, le Sahel, ce que c'est. C'est un espace traversé par des crises multidimensionnelles et qui se répètent presque toutes les années. Donc cela nous impose une certaine attitude d'anticipation et d'atténuation. Pour nous, le développement transfrontalier demeure un élément essentiel sur lequel on peut s'appuyer pour vraiment faire développer l'élevage et même nos pays. Malheureusement, depuis, les agendas ont changé et nous ne bénéficions plus de cette attention comme il se doit. D'où l'intérêt pour RBM de rechercher d'autres approches qui ne conviennent plus aux approches passées. C'est pourquoi, d'abord, nous avons très vite compris que le problème fondamental qui se pose à nos éleveurs, c'est que l'humanitaire ou bien l'aide ne s'attaque qu'à une seule dimension du pastoralisme, c'est-à-dire aux animaux, alors qu'il y a des hommes. Les animaux, s'il y a une sécheresse, une calamité quelconque, on essaie de leur donner de l'aliment bétail. Et les éleveurs ils oublient que derrière les animaux, il y a aussi des hommes. Donc nous avons très vite cherché à avoir des outils plus adaptés qui répondent au mieux aux préoccupations des éleveurs, à la spécificité des éleveurs. C'est pourquoi nous avons essayé de faire la distinction. Dans les ciblages, il y a un ciblage administratif et un ciblage social que nous avons instauré. Et là, c'est beaucoup plus inclusif que les approches passées. Et il y a toutes les questions de dialogue intergénérationnel qui sont laissées au détriment de formations classiques qui ne font pas la jonction entre les jeunes et les vieux, ce qui ne contribue en rien à une entente entre les générations. Nous souhaitons qu'il y ait un retour de ces investissements privés et publics pour faire vivre ces grands espaces qui constituent généralement une grande partie de nos territoires. Sans viabiliser ces territoires, on ne peut pas atteindre les objectifs qu'on veut. Donc, moi, comme je l'ai dit tantôt, il faut une véritable reconnaissance politique du pastoralisme. ne pas essayer de l'habiller avec des concepts nouveaux comme le pastoralisme durable ou modernisation de l'élevage ou sédentarisation. Non. Le contexte sahélien exige que nous ayons dans ces espaces assez d'investissement, qu'ils soient privés ou publics. D'autre part, il faut que nous ayons une approche plus globale qui règle toutes les crises, les différentes crises qui sont dans le Sahel, c'est-à-dire sécuritaires, comment dirais-je, climatiques, politiques et autres. On ne peut pas prendre segment par segment, vouloir créer des solutions.
We were able to read. I realized they were quite low here, but we'll probably give you the link to the YouTube video and hope that you can follow. So I'll move us on to the next segment. And here is where we want to get into an interactive session. And in this session, as Guyo earlier on came on, he told us that, pastoralists indeed have answers to some of the problems that they're experiencing. It's only that climate change has really exacerbated the problem. So as resource persons, we need to come in and propose probably, and also listen to them on what really works. So we'll move on to 4 groups, and these groups are organized by 4 resource persons. We have Nuria Golo, who is CEO, Marsabit Women Advocacy and Development. Nuria, she's at the back. She'll lead one discussion. We also have Amadou Adamau, National President, Mbororo Social and Cultural Development Association, Cameroon. He's right here. We have Jason Moku, CEO, Drylands Learning and Capacity Development, and also head of Kenya Pastoralist Parliamentary Group. Where are you, Jason? Good. And then we have Laureen Ongesa, who is Program Officer with Reconcile. So we are going to have 4 very quick discussions that will take us around 15 minutes, where we want to get a few insights on how can we really tap into these pastoralist communities. So I'd advise us to move. We have 4 groups. Just sit around. If you're close to them, you can turn around. Just turn to the person nearest to you. We have Laureen. Laureen is here. They have questions that they are going to pose to the participants, and at the end of it all, we are going to hear a report back from each of those. So we have Laureen here, just 4 groups only. Thank you, Peter. Peter is helping. Yes. We realize that you have been listening to so many sessions, so we want to engage your brains. And yes, you have, I said, how many? 12 minutes now, because we've spent 3 organizing ourselves. So let's get started. Some quick reflections. I know that the discussions are quite engaging. I feel like we should continue. 3 minutes. No. 3 minutes per group. So now we are going to go into your groups. We want to hear your feedback, starting with the group closest to me. You have 3 minutes to give us a summary of your very engaging discussions. It should be on.
Okay, thank you very much. Should I sit here? Huh? Okay, it's good, I think, and better for me. Hello? Okay, thank you very much. I think maybe I will just face the groups. Like this is better. Okay, thank you very much for everybody to participate to this. I like the approach, the methodology. So we start by interaction, and then when it rises up, and then now we come to reflection, and then it's good, I think, because every time we don't have time for reflection or engaging. Okay, in our group, we start by putting the context in our different regions. We start by Ethiopia, with Amede, my homonym, set up the context with between the difference between dry land and highland, which is governed in different way, and which where they have developed a resilience approach, sometimes by planting new trees, and then which can hurt because they face a lot of flooding situation, and then which destroy everything, and then animal doesn't have anything to eat, and then it can cause a lot of conflict, agro-pastoral, farmer-grazer conflicts. But what is interesting here, by bringing new plants, for us, we tried it in Cameroon. We face a lot of new invasive species. I don't know whether you didn't mention it, but this is a risk as well. I don't know how you handle it, but it's a good way of facing the climate change, I think. Thirdly, the phenomenon. We all know that pastoralism deal with two things. What he says, asset and access. Access to what? To land. Because many people are talking about the right to ownership, while in to the pastoralist communities, we are till now in the level of accessing even land, accessing the land, because it's not easy for us in many countries. Many people have, and even the land reform think that, okay, pastoralists are nomad.
I'll cut you short because we have to go to the next group.
Oh, this is not fair.
I know, but time is up. I will come back to you. Yeah.
Okay.
But we also have someone in your group who will also come in, so I'm sure he'll raise the issues. Thank you. Okay. Let's move on to group 2. Yes. Yes, thank you for that. 3 minutes, yes. Lauren, the same microphone? Okay. So, 3 minutes, Lauren.
Yeah, our group, we were looking at a number of issues came up, and one of them was how land rights support pastoral livelihoods, and also how should the government and also international communities prioritize, what really should they prioritize. So some of the issues that came up were, first of all, we realized that the big challenge to pastoral lands is, one of them is commercialization of land, and also the issue of subdivision and privatization. So some of the recommendations that were coming up and the issues that were really coming up from my group was, one, we were looking at we were looking at the issue of, recognizing land tenure, the government to recognize land tenure for pastoralists, and also recognize mobility of pastoralists. And also, one thing that also came up that was very important was the policy consultation process needs to be very transparent and needs to involve the community. The communities at all levels. And that needs for what is called the free, prior, and informed consent in case of compulsory acquisition in the pastoral areas. And we are also looking at building of pastoral voices through national and regional platforms that are really existing. So we have these regional initiatives that are upcoming, so we need to have pastoralist voices included in that. Should I continue?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. One last one is, of course, we need to build more on the knowledge of pastoralism. Of course, the indigenous traditional knowledge as very key to when you're talking about seasonal grazing and also supporting the adaptive capacity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laureen, and that group. Thank you. A round of applause. And to group one as well. I forgot to acknowledge you guys. Yes. Yes, Nuria's group. Thank you.
From my group,
3 minutes.
Of course, we have had traditional coping mechanisms. We have had early action. For example, in our community, we do what is called calving. Calving is a process whereby during drought, if there's a heavy drought, the calves are killed so that the mothers will be stronger. Because if they'll be feeding the calves, they'll also be weak and all of them might perish. So that's one of the mechanisms. And then there's also a strong grazing pattern, which is managed by traditional elders. And the grazing pattern is that they know where to graze during rainy season and where to graze during dry season. And it is accepted across board from the management of the elders. Traditional government system is very strong. And then we have silos harvesting, where this hay is cut and packed for future use. But in the process, what has advantages must have disadvantages. We have resource-based conflict within the communities, because if there's maybe a place with water and pasture, and the other community does not come through the right process and they invade, that will instigate conflict. Another challenge is phones and network. These phones, these were herders want to be around town. They are on the road. They don't want to go far into the bush because this is a new thing and they want to engage in it. Probably they need to use it positively, but not, leaving the animals and working on that. Another thing, we have drugs, which is called cat, mera, and drugs also. So the herders sometimes engage in eating this cat. And when they eat cat, the following day, they can't wake up. And the animals can even go astray.
They're drugged.
They are drugged. And then mobility, our lifestyle is about mobility. And in the case of mobility, there's a spread of diseases. These are not taken into consideration sometimes. And also politically instigated conflict. Pastoralists are resilient and adaptive capacity is threatened because one hazard comes after the other. We have drought, we have floods, then after a short time we have locust, COVID. So it has become unbearable.
Okay,
they are not able to.
Thank you for that. Thank you for those points. We'll find a way of connecting all of them.
Okay.
Let's move to the last group here.
Thank you. We have been looking at the policy issues in our group, and maybe I just build on what she has said. Because of the stress, I've several points I want to make, but let me start from where she ended. There are a lot of stress, of course, because of the frequency of shocks and stress and losses. And increasingly, the mental health of pastoralists is showing some indication that the domestic violence and violences are increasing. But what is surprising is that pastoralists are not leaving. They actually step out out the system. When it collapses, go find another opportunities and find another adaptive strategy and still go back, because they know it's the most viable that can really provide them wealth and food and all that. This is one area we've noted, and those opportunities are rare. If the policy will be around creating now opportunities for people to return after shocks, then that's an area of that can create some early actions. The other area we talked about was around the politics. In politically, pastoralism is not a very strong. There are not very many. There are very few voters. And because of being most of the time self-reliant, until when the pictures come onto the screen and of stress and all that, the response is not planned for. So politically, it's not a priorities in most of the places, and that creates a challenge for the system, because there are certain policy areas that actually require as a priority to be done, but it's not getting done. The other one is a major universal problem, where there is more incentive for government and bigger organization to actually get money for relief than looking at issues of resilience, early action, anticipatory actions. It's so easy to get money for relief and not for the other things that build communities to prepare them to be able to respond to that. The land question has been raised. The question around the issue of land rights, I think pastoralists more than other people require secure land tenure. There's a lot of movement around land being taken away from which has been used for adaptation before, that takes them through the stress period, which continue going. There are several policy mistakes that have been done in the past, which is creating problem. One of them was, as a drought response, settling pastoralists is a very serious problematic policy direction, where you centralize them because you expect to respond to drought, but you are creating more problems. The other one is dryland crop production, is policy mistakes in dryland areas. And the final one, which I want to say, is about financing, about actually the whole area of policy development itself. Sometimes the experts rely on a very little, partly researched knowledge to develop policies that are not really coherent or even talk to each other. We looked at, if policy has to be developed, 3 things has to be on the table. One was around livestock, the other one is about the people, and the other one is about land. You separate those 3 things and try to do a policy one for the other in silos, that's the beginning of the problem. And the last point is around a lot of production of policies, but very little action. Because most of the policies, before you act, the cycle has come back and you run to something else, and then the cycle continues until when you are not able to implement the policies that you have produced. In our work, actually, with DLCI, we are trying to, in Kenya, to look at implementation of policy more as a way forward than policy formulation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those excellent points. I was about to cut you off when you gave us 3 points. I thought those were good enough, but all your points. And for the rest of you in the group, please, a round of applause to all of you. Those are excellent, excellent points. And we were just trying out this this particular style of, having such kind of a presentation here. We are so happy that we've gotten you engaged and you've given us very good points. So at this point, we have just about 9 minutes and we have to end the session. But we want to hear a few reflections, and I want to call Kuno Sheikh Abdi, who is Kenya Country Director, Mercy Corps. He's going to reflect on what he has had in the room. You may come over. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think once we discussed and started off by Guyo, having Jarso and Nuria and our colleague from Cameroon, I think it's exhausted. I can only repeat what you've said, and these are my reflections, of course, that we have the experience, and the experience is with the pastoralists, the experience with the researchers. But bringing together this experience, I think, is the key, and that's why we're here all together. And this experience has been traditional experience. and the experience in the region, in the Horn of Africa and, of course, West Africa, pastoralism has been there for the last 500 years and more, which means it worked for them. It means that the experience is the right experience. So this is, I think, one element. The second element I want to mention here is there is too much focus, I think, on the environment when we're discussing climate change issues. We're forgetting the people. The people are the pastoralists. They have to be, I think, the center of the discussion here. We cannot divorce, as Jarso said, land, people, and livestock. And probably I want to add the fourth one, policy. If we do it correctly, I think we will be better off. Doing it correctly, are so many factors underlying. One of it is mobility. If we block mobility, we kill pastoralism. And I think when we talk about drylands ecosystem, it's not necessarily pastoralism alone. Drylands ecosystem calls for pastoralism because that is what is one of the most viable and conservation sensitive ventures that we've seen. Finally, I think 2 points, not more than two. One is we talked more about early warning action, I think, in the groups. What I will want to add is a little bit of anticipated action. Early warning action, I think, is fantastic. But of course, if we have more investment to anticipate these droughts that are every 2 years, and even anticipate the floods, I think we'll be doing a lot of service to the pastoralist communities and drylands. Very finally, I think the question of the carbon rush that Guyo has mentioned, if it's not designed well, I think it will be disastrous to the pastoralist communities. With better designing, I think pastoralism is a conservation tool. If we interact with the environment better, because we can't do away with it, I think it will be a better tool to enhance carbon sequestration and even benefit the people and the pastoralist communities. I want to stop there, probably just to say finally that I am representing an organization, Masiko Kenya, and Masiko Global, I think, has a very good experience on these dynamics that we kind of are talking about. We have a regional program on livestock, a regional livestock program that just started this year. We have ASAL resilience programs interacting with the livestock in northern Kenya, and I think will be good to exchange with you guys in different forums so that we can learn from each other and we see what we can do better. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that great summary and also for allowing us to know what Mercy Corps is all about. Great work ongoing indeed. Allow me to invite our next speaker who will reflect. That's Jean DiMata, multi-country program manager. What's the organization again? Oh, SNP.
Let's say what I will be saying is a little bit a perspective from many countries where I worked for SNV. In the past, I was a country director of SNV in 8 countries in Africa, from Burkina to Rwanda, Zambia, Guinea-Bissau, DRC, Cameroon, and so forth. So I think we are not only talking about livestock and pastoralism. We wanted to connect livestock and pastoralism with climate adaptation. We should keep it in mind because we are considering livestock and pastoralism has alliance for climate adaptation. But we wanted to keep them as a key alliance, meaning that we need to enable them to manage transitions, to ensure for themselves food security and also livelihood. That one is important. When I was listening a little bit to all the communication, I was thinking maybe reflecting on 4 points. The first point, I think it was already touched a little bit from my predecessor. It is about the asset. You know, we cannot talk about livestock, we cannot talk about pastoralism without talking about the asset and access. So the most important to say is that we could and we should call on countries to stop converting the rangeland and also the grassland in the countries. And also to invest and to restore, but not restoring as a country government, but in participation with the communities. It is one. You know, in the many regions, pastoralism and livestock is connected to sometimes insecurity, sometimes violence. But one of the issues is also the lack of investment, at least from the West African level, the Sahel part of the countries. So we could necessarily call for more investment, that means sustainable investment in the Sahel regions, and also making sure that countries can also offer the opportunity to secure communities and people. I would like also to say that we probably also need to improve the communication about, let's say, peace between the communities, communication about peaceful relationship at the transborder level, also communication about the collaboration around the service, the security service across the border in the countries. And the last but not the least, government should, and also the donors and private sector should invest in livestock. Not because livestock and pastoralism are providing proteins, but we should also know that because the range lands and also the grasslands, pastoralism and livestock are really key in terms of protecting environment, but also in contributing also to sequestrate carbon. Thank you.
Thank you again. Great summary. Natasha Maru. She is Global Lead for Rangerants and Pastoralists at International Land Coalition. Welcome.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this session because I feel like so much of what has been said has been so on point that at some point I began to think that what would I even say? We are at a loss because everything has been said already. The fact that, land, livestock, and livelihoods are interdependent is undeniable. The fact that there is a reciprocal relationship between pastoralists and their environment or their lands is also obvious. The fact that, pastoralists as animal production systems in rangelands derive from their environment, but as well as offer benefits through their practices to the environment is obvious and very well known in this room. And we're also very aware of the fact that, pastoral practices, pastoral strategies, and adaptation capacities have their own place. Things like mobility need to be acknowledged and incorporated within policy processes. And we know how policies are also failing pastoralists in so many ways by, settling them down, enclosing, bounding, siloing, and these kind of things. So, in this room full of this very rich knowledge on pastoralism, I wonder why then there is this persistence of sort of pushing pastoralists to the margins consistently. And it's very clear to me that there is a lack of political will. The knowledge of how pastoralist systems are so strong exists. And what are the kind of solutions, policy solutions exist. But there is a very, very strong lack of political will in making those solutions operationable, right? And so it makes me really happy to then talk about work that we are doing at ILC, at the International Land Coalition, because something that can be a strong pushback to the lack of political will is pastoralists organizing together and forming a good, strong voice at national levels, at regional levels, so that they can be an important constituency that can have voice to influence policy decisions. So at the International Land Coalition, through our priority countries and national land coalitions, through our regional pastoralist platforms, this is something that we're trying to do, bringing together pastoralist representatives, pastoralist organizations together, offering a platform for sharing knowledge, for building capacities, and for generating advocacy together that can really, hopefully, push, policy solutions into the right direction. And this is my call. I mean, I'm very happy to see that we have members from our pastoralist platform here amongst us, and to everybody else also engaging with pastoralists. This is a very strong call to come together, organize, so that you can have a stronger voice together. Thank you.
Thank you. We say men before, women first. Strong closing. Thank you very much, Ms. Natasha, for those remarks. And of course, this is where we bring it to a close. And just to reiterate that, as we have seen, climate change multiplies and exacerbates environmental and human-driven shocks and risks facing pastoralists. But we've also seen that these same pastoralists are vital allies because they do have ideas, because they've been doing it for a long time on how we should move forward. And so we should actually go for early actions and anticipatory investment, enabling dryland and rangeland communities to manage transitions. And these are very key to their livelihood and food security. So with that, I'd like to bring it to a close. I want to thank all the 3 organizations who put this together. I want to thank Mercy Corps. I want to thank Jamil Observatory, based at ILRI, SNV, and the International Land Coalition. My name is Vivian. I've been your host. Thank you all for a good session. Thank you, Peter, for everything.